If you walked into a greenhouse in the middle of winter, snow outside, temperatures far below freezing, you would expect one thing: heat coming from somewhere, a furnace, a heater, maybe pipes running under the floor, something burning, something powered, something connected to a system you pay for. But what if you walked into that same greenhouse and there was nothing? No wires, no fuel, no machines. And yet the air was warm, the soil was alive, and vegetables were growing as if it were spring. That's not a theory. That's not experimental. It's something that has already been done, repeatedly, reliably, and for far longer than most modern heating systems have even existed. In the mid-1800s, farmers in Pennsylvania were growing crops through the harshest months of winter without burning fuel. Their greenhouses didn't freeze, even when temperatures outside dropped to extremes that would normally kill anything inside. And when modern engineers finally tested the same system using controlled measurements, the results weren't just impressive, they were uncomfortable, because it forced a simple question. If this works, why isn't everyone using it? The answer begins with something most people completely overlook. Heat doesn't always come from fire. In fact, some of the most consistent heat sources on Earth don't involve combustion at all. They come from biological activity, specifically decomposition. When organic material breaks down, bacteria consume it, and in the process, they release energy. That energy becomes heat. Not a small amount of heat, but enough to reach temperatures well above what most people would expect from something as simple as a compost pile. Under the right conditions, decomposing organic matter can reach temperatures between 50 and 70 degrees Celsius. That's hotter than the water in many home heating systems. And more importantly, it's continuous. As long as the process is active, heat is being generated. Now imagine that heat not sitting in a pile outside, but being placed directly inside a controlled environment. That's the foundation of the system. Instead of separating waste from function, the Amish method integrates it. Organic material, leaves, straw, manure, food scraps, is placed strategically within or beneath the greenhouse structure. As it decomposes, it releases heat directly into the environment where it's needed most. But heat alone isn't enough, because any system that generates heat also loses it, and if that loss isn't controlled, the system becomes unstable. Temperatures fluctuate, efficiency drops, and the environment becomes unpredictable. That's where the second component comes in. Thermal mass. Thermal mass is not a device, it's not a machine. It's simply a material that absorbs heat slowly and releases it slowly. Water is one of the most effective examples. A large volume of water can store a significant amount of energy without changing temperature quickly. In this system, water barrels, soil, stone, and other dense materials act as storage units. During the day, when heat is abundant, whether from the sun or biological activity, these materials absorb excess energy. Then, when temperatures drop at night, they release that stored heat back into the environment. The result is stability. Instead of sharp temperature swings, the greenhouse maintains a steady range. Not because it's constantly generating heat, but because it's managing it. And then there's the third component, the one that most people already understand, but rarely use correctly: sunlight. Even in winter, sunlight carries a massive amount of energy. The difference is angle. During colder months, the sun sits lower in the sky. That changes how its energy reaches surfaces. But if a structure is designed to capture that low-angle light, the amount of heat collected can still be significant. This is why orientation matters. The greenhouse is positioned to face the sun directly during the hours when sunlight is available. The glazing, the transparent surface, allows solar radiation to enter. Inside, that energy is absorbed by darker surfaces and converted into heat. And once again, thermal mass plays a role. Instead of letting that heat escape, the structure holds onto it, it stores it, and then it releases it when it's needed most. Now, when these three systems, biological heat, thermal storage, and solar gain, are combined, something interesting happens. They begin to support each other. When one source decreases, another compensates. When heat is abundant, it's stored. When it's needed, it's released. The system becomes self-regulating, not through electronics or sensors, but through natural feedback. And there's a fourth effect that most people don't even consider: carbon dioxide. As organic material decomposes, it releases CO2. In most environments, this would be irrelevant, but inside a greenhouse, it becomes a powerful advantage. Plants rely on carbon dioxide for growth. Commercial greenhouses often inject CO2 artificially to increase yield. This system produces it automatically, no additional input, no extra cost, just another layer of efficiency built into the process. So now you have a structure that generates heat, stores it, captures additional energy from the sun, and enhances plant growth, all without external power. And this brings us back to the question, why isn't this everywhere? The answer isn't technical, it's structural. Modern systems are designed around dependency. They rely on inputs, fuel, electricity, components that need replacement. They are built to operate within networks that require continuous interaction. This system doesn't fit that model. It doesn't require ongoing purchases, it doesn't rely on centralized infrastructure, and it doesn't generate recurring demand. That makes it difficult to standardize, difficult to regulate, and difficult to integrate into systems that depend on continuous consumption. Instead, it exists in a different space, one where knowledge is passed through practice, not products. And that's why it survived in places like Amish communities, not because it was hidden, but because it was never replaced. While modern agriculture moved toward industrial systems, these methods remained unchanged, preserved through use, refined through experience, and largely ignored by institutions that had moved in a different direction. But now, something is changing. As energy costs rise and systems become more fragile, interest in alternatives is growing. People are starting to question whether dependence is the only option, whether there are systems that operate differently. And when they look, they find this, not as a theory, but as something that has already been tested. So what does it take to build one? It starts with location. The structure needs consistent exposure to sunlight during winter months. That means positioning it where shadows won't block incoming light. The orientation matters, the angle matters, because this system doesn't rely on excess, it relies on efficiency. The foundation goes deeper than most people expect. By placing parts of the system below the frost line, the structure takes advantage of the ground's natural stability. Temperature fluctuations decrease, heat loss is reduced, and the entire system becomes more consistent. Then comes the layout. The north side is insulated, solid, designed to retain heat. The south side is open, glazed, positioned to capture sunlight. Inside, thermal mass is placed where it can absorb and release energy effectively. And then the core, the compost system. This isn't random. The ratio of materials matters. The moisture level matters. The airflow matters, because the goal isn't just decomposition, it's controlled decomposition, a process that produces heat steadily, not chaotically. When done correctly, the system activates quickly, heat begins to build, and within days, the environment starts to change, from cold to stable, from inactive to productive. And over time, the system continues to operate, not because it's powered, but because it's balanced. That's the key difference. Modern systems force outcomes. They apply energy directly. They react to changes. This system works with them. It uses what's already happening, biological processes, solar input, thermal behavior, and aligns them toward a single goal. And once it's built, the role of the builder changes. You're no longer operating a system. You're maintaining conditions, adjusting airflow, monitoring moisture, observing plant response, not controlling everything, but guiding it. And that shift is important, because it changes how you think about systems entirely. From something you depend on, to something you understand. From something you pay for, to something you manage. And that's why this matters beyond just agriculture, because it shows a different approach, one where efficiency doesn't come from complexity, but from alignment, where systems don't need constant input to function, where stability comes from design, not from control. And once you see that clearly, it becomes difficult to ignore, because the knowledge isn't new, the materials aren't rare, the process isn't complicated, it's just unfamiliar. And that unfamiliarity is the only real barrier, because everything else already works. If this changed the way you think about heat, energy, or even something as simple as waste, subscribe. Because the next system might change how you think about everything you build.